Hello, and welcome to the Farmhouse. I'm Candace Wierzbowski.
And I'm Stephanie Spiker.
And today we're talking to Pasa Sustainable Agriculture's Executive Director, Hannah Smith-Brubaker.
Hannah has been the Executive Director at Pasa since 2017, where she's had a hand in driving Pasa's mission of supporting and promoting sustainable farming practices and encouraging community-focused farms and food systems. Prior to that, she's been the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture here in Pennsylvania, and she's also served as President of the Pennsylvania Farmers Union. Hannah has also testified before the U.S. Congress on organic and sustainable agriculture.
In addition to all this, Hannah also runs Juniata View Farm in Mifflintown, Pennsylvania, where she farms pasture-raised Shetland sheep for fiber. Let's welcome Hannah into the farmhouse.
Hannah, welcome to the farmhouse. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so pleased to be here today.
So can you tell us what Pasa Sustainable Agriculture is and what your role is as the executive director?
Sure. So a lot of people don't know that Pasa actually started as a conference before it was a nonprofit. And it was just a group of farmers who got together and wanted to compare notes about what was working, what wasn't working in sustainable agriculture. There weren't a lot of resources at that time. This was 1991. That conference was so successful that we formed a nonprofit, and we're heading now into our 34th conference in 2025.
Oh, wow.
My background with Pasa is that my family, my farm, have been members of Pasa for a very long time, and it's a community that means a lot to me. And I was serving as Deputy Secretary of Agriculture for Pennsylvania when the executive director position came open, and it's been my honor every day since then to serve as executive director, to serve this community that means so much to me.
So recently, or fairly recently, I guess, Pasa has received multiple grants towards supporting climate smart funding. Are you at all concerned about the change in administration and how it could threaten that funding?
With every new administration, there are changes to be faced and a lot of uncertainties. The current administration under President Biden really was providing pathways for farmers who really care a lot about ecologically sound farming practices to embrace their frontline role with the climate and mitigating some of the issues that come along with the climate, like droughts and these deluges of rain that are causing so much flooding around us. The incoming administration under President Trump has overtly expressed that issues such as the climate, conservation, the environment are considered ancillary issues to agriculture. I would take issue with that, and I think a lot of our farmers would as well. Agriculture can exacerbate the climate problems, but farmers can really play a fundamental role in climate resilience, and I hope that they get to continue to do that.
We'll lighten it up a little bit with the next question. So, as if your role at Pasa doesn't keep you busy enough, you also run Juniata View Farm. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do at your farm?
Sure. I have a pastured livestock farm. I raise Shetland sheep for fiber. I actually got started with that when my daughter was a young teenager and spending so much money on yarn that we really had to do something about it. So an older farmer that was retiring out of sheep farming got her started with a starter flock. And that's a lot of what I do today is help farmers who want to get into raising fiber sheep to get a starter flock. So usually it's providing them with 4 or 5 ewes and a ram. Other than that, I primarily use the sheep for conservation grazing. I purchased about 30 acres that had been in conventional row crops for a long time with a lot of heavy chemical application. And there really was not much biological activity in that land at all when I purchased it. And with the sheep and everything they naturally do, that land has really been renovated and it's a beautiful pasture now.
Yeah, I've looked at the Facebook page for your farm and I love all the sheep pictures that you share.
Likewise. Yeah. So I saw that you guys have implemented silvopasture on your farm, which isn't a form of farming that I think a lot of people outside of agriculture are familiar with. Could you explain what that is and why it's something worth considering?
Mhm. So silvopasture is one of the practices that's integral to something called agroforestry, which is sort of the intersection of forestry and agriculture. Specific to silvopasture, we're adding trees to pasture in a way that, for example, provides shade for the animals. Oftentimes they might be locust trees that could provide feed for them through pods. We know that with a changing climate, and in particular with my raising fiber sheep, these extreme hot temperatures actually have outcomes such as, reducing the growth of the animal. And so your return on investment when you go to process that animal for meat. So having the shade, having the cooler temperatures really can be very beneficial, not only for the animal, but for the farmer's bottom line.
It's interesting. So your farm is also part of PASA's soil health benchmark study. So what's the purpose of this study and how do farmers participate?
Yeah, so we are now in our 9th year with the soil health benchmark study. It's really a one of a kind in the nation. So it's not taking place on a research farm. It's actual farmers on working farms conducting research on their own farms. It starts with the farmer participating in soil sampling with our research team, getting that baseline for the health of their soils, and progressively every year meeting with other farmers in their cohort to improve their soil health. And so this is all types of farmers. It might be conventional row crop farmers who are just dabbling in no-till. It might be organic vegetable farmers or pasture-based dairy farmers, all coming together to compare notes about their soil health. And the power of that is they sometimes surprise each other. Oh, the organic farmer says, how in the world, you conventional row crop farmer, do you have soil health that's comparable to mine? And the conventional row crop farmer says, wow, you're using tillage. How is it possible that you have soil health that's comparable to mine? And we see that soil health really is place specific. And sometimes we need to use tillage, conservation tillage, for renovating soil. And the no-till farmers really have done wonders in helping some of the organic vegetable farmers understand that that disturbance of soil can really have negative impacts as well. So we published our first full report in 2021, and we're looking in 2025 to issue another public report. Any farmer who's interested in participating, check out our website at pasafarming.org. A lot of information about our programs there, and we're happy to talk to them.
It's really interesting how it's, such a wide array of farmers that are participating. I don't know if I've ever actually looked at the report you guys have issued, but I want to check it out now. I want to see all the details.
I think the study is an example of the power of the PASA community in that we are a very big tent organization. We are not prescriptive. We do not say you have to be certified organic to be a member, or you have to be any particular type of practice or grow any particular type of food. Rather, if you want to engage in the sustainable agriculture conversation, we welcome you to the table. And often that means people do move along that sustainability continuum, but we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome to engage.
Yeah, and that kind of rolls right into my next question because, when I was looking at the soil health benchmark study, I was impressed by how, in addition to the number of farmers participating in it, how many organizations PASA partners with for it. I mean, you guys are working with Rodale and Penn State Extension, Cornell, just to name a few. And I couldn't help but think about how in so many industries, companies value competition over collaboration. And so I wanted to ask, what do you think it is about farming that lends itself to collaboration? Why does ag seem to attract, sort of an all together now mentality?
Oh, because we wouldn't survive without each other. Really, you know, farming for many people is is more than, well, I'd say for all farmers really, likely not just a job. It's a way of living. It's a way of engaging with the earth, with animals. It's a great way of raising our families. But it takes community to do all of that. I often say, even in this current political climate, my barn's on fire. I don't think any of my neighbors are going to ask me what my political party is before they help me put out that fire. And we see that over and over again in agriculture, that it's that human element of needing each other and knowing that without really reaching out to each other and coming to each other's aid, we can't possibly produce the food that we need to produce for all the people.
Your ag resume is really long, from having served as PA's deputy ag secretary, as you mentioned, to even writing a column for us here at Lancaster Farming. So, how did you find your way to working in agriculture, and what's inspired you to keep putting yourself kind of out there into all different aspects of the industry?
Well, I grew up in a family that really loved fresh food. My grandparents had a really big garden, and my grandfather was obsessed with perfecting growing fruit trees. Um, my first adult agricultural job was actually in Israel, working on a kibbutz, pruning grapevines. And something about those early experiences, I got paid I got fruit in exchange for doing that job. I didn't get actually paid money. There's something about that idea of you do the work and you get the food. You do the work, you get the nourishment, and that relationship that was always really fascinating to me. And I worked in human services for probably the first 15 years of my career. My degree is in organizational behavior and applied psychology, and I love seeing the way people interact with each other, what those relationships bring about that wouldn't happen without that partnership. Around the time that I was maybe in my late 20s, my younger brother started farming. He now has a very large organic pastured livestock farm in southern Kentucky. I spent a lot of time on his farm. I was a member of CSA and I would often volunteer on farms in exchange for food. And then I married into a family that, that had a farm, and we farmed together for 15 years. And it's just an integral part of my life. And yes, it's the food, but it's also the people. And I love being part of agriculture. I hope that every endeavor I have for the rest of my life has some connection to agriculture.
I love that.
Yeah. So something that you didn't mention when we were going through everything that you've done and experienced is that you've also testified in front of Congress. You've spoken about organic and sustainable ag. How do you prepare for that? And what's it like to be in the room when all that is happening?
Well, when I start getting nervous, and I do get nervous in those situations, I take a breath and I remind myself of something that a politician once said in one of these hearings, and I won't say much more about them except that we weren't really seeing eye to eye politically. But he actually said, regardless of the way I vote, I buy organic at the grocery store. And I thought that was interesting, not to point out that there might have been some incoherence between the way he votes and what he puts his dollars behind. But it reminds me that everybody is a human being. I learned later that it was actually his wife who pressured him to buy organic at the grocery store. And in my mind, everything comes down to relationships, everything. And so when I'm in those situations and I feel like I have even the smallest opportunity to influence the way someone thinks and hopefully the way they vote, I remember, okay, what is it about this person that I can tap into, that I can establish just a little bit of relationship with them to aid in that influence? And it's because I'm doing it on behalf of people that I care about an awful lot. And I really want to bring their interest to the fore.
Switching gears a little, you talked at the beginning about PASA's annual conference, and the next one's coming up in February. So I'm sure you're already kind of neck deep in planning for that. But can you give us any hints of what's on the schedule, and are there any sessions in particular that you're really excited about?
Absolutely. I love talking about our conference. So our conference is February 5th through the 7th at the Lancaster Convention Center. Our keynote speakers this year are Jaime Elizondo, and he is going to be talking about real wealth ranching. And what he means by real wealth is the balance of money, time, and health, which I think is fabulous to think about, right in alignment with sustainable agriculture. And then Dr. Lila June, who is an Indigenous community organizer and works with a lot of Indigenous farmers. We have some featured speakers like Jean-Martin Fortier from the Market Garden Institute, Jeff Poppin, the barefoot farmer, if he's pretty famous, if you've heard of him before. Some of the sessions, and there are over 80 sessions and a lot of opportunities for food tasting and social events. But some of the ones I'm really excited about are there are quite a few agroforestry sessions. We have some advanced grower sessions this year, which, we span the life, it's the lifespan at PASA. We have little tiny babies and people who've retired out of farming, and we really want to make sure that everybody can find a place there and is really challenged. I'm interested in some of the beekeeping sessions. We have a session called Business Planning for Urban BIPOC Farmers, stuff on cover crops, H2A and immigration issues. So it really runs the gamut.
Sounds like literally something for everyone. Like everyone could find a session they're interested in.
Absolutely. And we welcome kids. I heard someone once say we're really the only very large agricultural conference that has a kids program, and we welcome babies in arms, and it's just a family event.
I think it's more of that community that we keep hearing about.
Absolutely.
So what does it mean to be a woman in ag?
Being a woman in ag means taking seriously my responsibility for the next generation. It means that my daughter learned to drive a tractor at a very early age, and she can back up something that's hooked with a hitch in a way that I'll never be able to. It means that my son knows a lot about what it means to be part of a food system and that ag community. It means that a lot of the farmers that we support, when it really comes down to it at different stages of development, it's often an issue that is impacting their family that needs to be worked through. And I feel like, having gone through farm transition myself, I can help tap into what are the dynamics going on in that family that really need to be tended to make this a better transition. It means making sure that everybody's voice is heard at the table. I know what it's like to be the only woman in the room. And I want to make sure that every person who's in the room feels like they can step up to the table and have their voice be heard.
That's awesome. I think that wraps it up for us. So thank you, Hannah, for stopping by the farmhouse today.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. Oh, and I do want to say, Eric has been after me to do this podcast, but what convinced me was each of your dedication to potatoes.
Oh, you know what? I will take that as such a win. We are so pro potato on this podcast.
I think it's one of those things where we don't realize how much we talk about it until someone brings it up. And it's like, oh, yeah.
Hey, I love a potato. No shame.
If that's our brand, I'm fine with it. So Hannah is a very accomplished person. She's done some amazing things with her career in agriculture, and it was fun seen her kind of light up when we asked her what was going to be, kind of on the docket for this year's PASA conference. I know it's a very exciting, very big event every year. And Steph, you've gone to that before, haven't you?
Yeah, I've only actually been there 1 year. I feel like we always have a handful of reporters who go to the conference, especially now that it's in Lancaster. I think it used to be, at one point it was held in State College. So now it's a lot closer to our office. So we have plenty of reporters who go. So I got to go 1 year, and I went to a session talking about growing algae and things that algae can be used for.
Oh, I remember that.
And I'm going to be honest, I don't think I knew that algae could be used for anything. To me, it was always just like that
slime.
Yeah, that gross stuff on a pond. So it's been a little while since I covered that session, so I don't remember all the details, but I'll make sure to link the article in the description of this episode. But it was, huge. You walk in, it's the convention center, it's a big space, and you're just surrounded by people of all ages and men and women and every walk of life, it seems like, is at this conference. And it was very cool to attend, and it made me want to go back again. So hopefully this year I'll have to go through the schedule. It obviously sounded like there's a lot of very cool stuff. So hopefully this year I can get back and cover some other stuff there. Yeah,
it sounds like a great scene. I love that she said that, there's stuff for kids to do. There's, they welcome, as she said, babies in arms. Because, realistically, it's hard to get away from the farm, and it's also hard to find childcare at times.
Yeah.
So it's great that they're embracing that.
Yeah, so I don't know if any of you are local to the area or would maybe want to travel, check out PASA's website for more info on the conference. We'll also link that for you in case you're interested in attending. Maybe I'll see you there.
Yeah. All right. And with that, we'll wrap things up. Thank you all for listening. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And if you really like this episode, please consider leaving us a review.
If you have any questions about this episode or the podcast in general, please email us at farmhouse@lancasterfarming.com.
You can also find us on social media at Lancaster Farming on most platforms.
Thank you again for listening and visiting us here at the Farmhouse. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Candace.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
This episode of The Farmhouse is copyright 2024 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family.
It was written by Stephanie Spiker and Candace Brusbowski. It was produced by Eric Herlock. The music you've heard throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.